What is going on, guys? This is the RotoQL Trips Wide NFL podcast for week 5 of the NFL season. I'm your host, Evan Cheney, and today I'm joined by just Gary Huber. I'm not going to say just Gary Huber because that would be a severe understatement, but just us two tonight. It's a little trippy.
Yeah, it's turning into a survival of the fittest podcast. We lot.
I mean, one of us one of us is going to make it to next week.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's gonna host. It might just be me, it might just be you, but
I
that's the way it's
It could
going.
be. That's the way this whole show seems to be going throughout the year. But yeah, we have a nice 12-game slate to talk about tonight. So let's just jump right into our first game of the week here. Our first game is Sunday. New England Patriots going up against the Cleveland Browns. Right now, the Patriots are 10.5-point favorites on the Browns in a game that features a 46.5-point total. There are a good chunk of injuries here to look at on the Patriots side of the ball. First, with Julian Edelman dealing with a foot injury. He was added to the injury report on Thursday, practiced in a limited fashion on Thursday as well. LeGarrette Blount with a hip injury. He did practice on Thursday with that hip, so that's a good sign to see. And Rob Gronkowski did not seem to be a full participant in practice this week, but he is practicing, which is good. And nothing for the Browns. Gary, Tom Brady's coming back this week. I don't know. Where do you see this one going?
Yeah, New England fans rejoice. Brady is back. I think there's a lot of plays on the New England side of the ball in this game. It should be pretty lopsided, and I think there's a lot of animosity from the Patriots side for Brady having a 4-game suspension. So I'm not even really afraid of the game script here getting out of hand. I think they'll use this as a lot of reps for Tom Brady for the rest of the season. So you can look at him at 7,500 for cash and GPP. If Edelman is not injured by Sunday, which it didn't seem that serious during Thursday practice, I like him at 67. Gronkowski, I'm going to need to see a injury report before I play him. But there's so many Patriots in play. Chris Hogan at 4,100, Danny Amendola at 3,900. And something that I am kind of predicting is now that Brady is back, we're going to see what happened last year with the passing backs. So Blount was relied on heavily when they were going with their backup quarterbacks. With Tom Brady back, I think you're going to see a lot of shotgun, a lot of spread formations, and you're going to see a little bit more involvement for James White and eventually Dion Lewis when he comes back. So I will not be playing Blount. And if you want to get sneaky, you might consider James White at 3,900. Your thoughts?
Man, man, you're killing my love for LeGarrette Blount this week. He's probably my favorite New England Patriot, especially on DraftKings. I mean, he doesn't have the PPR ability, but my God, he's just at 5,600 on DraftKings and a 10.5-point favorite. I love where GameScript is going in his direction. And James White, I can kind of get into him, but not a whole lot. So I think we disagree mightily on this game.
Yeah,
On where the Patriots are going, at least.
This is where I wish Tom or Dave were here to be the tiebreaker. But I think Blount at 5,600 is just it's too expensive for me. He's relying on touchdowns. He's not going to catch any passes. So there's no floor in PPR.
Yeah, but he's playing Cleveland. You have to realize the opponent is the Cleveland Browns.
And you got Tom Brady coming back from 4-game suspension. Wouldn't they want him to throw up 5 touchdown passes and to basically treat this as a practice game, get him back into the flow?
Yeah, when it is a practice game, when the Patriots blow teams out, you see what you do for Tom Brady, and that's handed off to LeGarrette Blount.
Well, I disagree. I don't think Tom Brady doesn't need practice handing balls off. I think he needs practice throwing it. So
he needs practice, like keeping them inflated. I don't know. There's just so much going into that. Looking at these Browns here, really all I can say is that I like the Patriots defense. I mean, there is still some fantasy value to be had on this team, mainly in Isaiah Crowell, who had a very strong game last week. Running the ball 16 times for 120 yards and a touchdown. And then he caught 3 balls for 22 yards. Is that? Yeah, 22 yards. So yeah, I like Isaiah Crowell this week. Terrell Pryor at 5,800. That's way too much. I don't know. No. I'm just no.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna say. I'm just gonna say no.
Yeah, I probably agree with you. I will note that, last week he was matched up against Josh Norman and put up some pretty respectable numbers against the top corner. He was 9 targets, 5 catches, 46 yards, and a touchdown. But with the Patriots' proclivity to take away the number one option, I think you're going to see him double teamed all day, and Belichick dare anybody else to beat him.
Which in what? That's what I'm saying. Like, in what world would we have predicted that Terrell Pryor was going to be worth a double coverage? It's like at what point in time would one have predicted this?
I'm not.
That's my question.
That's a great question. Like a year ago, we wouldn't even predict he was worthy of a roster spot, and now he's like the jack of all trades. It's amazing.
It is, but at 5,800 still, I mean, he's.
Well, hey,
he's bad.
Do you like Barnidge at 32?
I was just about to say something. His targets have been on the rise. I mean, he saw 7 targets last week, caught all 7 of them for 57 yards. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
I think I'm going to keep him in my player pool at 3,200. That's so cheap for someone. Like if they're going to take away Pryor, like we both think, they're going to be behind the entire game. They have to throw it somewhere, and New England is 5th worst versus the tight end. I think that's a pretty high upside dart throw, and worth considering.
You could. Oh God, killing myself here. I mean, you could, but it's risky.
Don't put a lot of money behind it, but it's worth considering.
Yeah, it truly is. Yeah, so moving on to our next game here, we have the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Detroit Lions here. The Eagles are favored by 3 points right now in a game that features a 46-point total. Only actually now 2 injuries have popped up since I've last checked. Eric Ebron and Marvin Jones are both questionable in this game. Eric Ebron is dealing with ankle, and that will probably keep him out of this game. I wouldn't be surprised if he was doubtful later on in the week. And Marvin Jones is dealing with a foot injury, but he did return to practice today after not practicing on Wednesday. So definitely a good spot for him there, or not a good spot for it as far as him playing. That's what I'm trying to say. So for this Eagles offense here, Gare, man, I mean, I know you're not rooting for the Eagles because I know you're a Vikings fan, but you still live in the city. You still experience everything that I experience on a daily basis. Please share our I hope mutual agreement for Carson Wentz's greatness.
So I will agree for it. I will agree to it for 1 week. Let's put it that way. The Detroit Lions have been atrocious versus the quarterback this year. They are the best matchup for quarterback in fantasy purposes. They are 2nd worst versus the tight end, 4th worst versus the wide receiver. So basically anyone you can throw the ball to. Detroit is awful at covering. So Carson Wentz is in a great spot at 6,400. And as long as he's not still thinking about hunting elk in the Pennsylvania wilderness, I think he'll be fine. I love Jordan Matthews this week at 6,800. He's a target monster. He's Wentz's favorite target. The Detroit Lions have put up no resistance. I think he's fantastic. Zach Ertz at 3,500. He's coming back and in a perfect spot. As long as DeAndre Levy is not returning for the Lions at linebacker, he's a fantastic play. Even if he does return, it just downgrades him slightly. He's still a really good play. But I am super impressed with the Eagles defense. I imagine they will create some turnovers and give extra opportunities to this offense. So I think there's a lot of people in play. But let's hear from the Philly, the official Philly guy.
Thank you. Yeah, so first of all, Carson Wentz has the greatest, one of the greatest stories already that I've ever heard. He's the dude's hunting out in like the middle of New Jersey, whatever. and he gets this phone call. Oh, I'm the starting quarterback, the freaking Eagles. Okay, like, wait, what kind of baller does it take to just be hunting out? Like when you know you're supposed to be playing football, wilderness with guns all around. It's like how great is that? Actually, no, not guns. He's a bow and arrow guy. Um,
Yeah.
so I've
Archer.
heard.
Yep.
I also heard. This is like, it, I don't know how much. I don't know how much this like goes into fantasy football, but it's still a football related topic, so I feel like it's appropriate. But like someone out there on like someone called into 97.5 The Fanatic, which for you non-Philly people is the like the main sports talk radio station around here. It's like, the ESPN affiliated one, what have you. Um, you know, damn my freaking phone here. Silence that thing. Yeah, so someone was like evaluating the way he threw or not threw, like used the bow and arrow and determined that he was left eye dominant. Like they I don't know how they did this. Oh, they somehow figured this out just by evaluating a picture that Carson Wentz took after he like took down one of the elk, and it was like, so he's left eye dominant now, as I now know. So anyone that's lined up, okay, so this is where it goes back to fantasy football. This is where I start to not sound crazy. The guys that are lined up on the left side of the field for the Philadelphia Eagles offense have a huge advantage. So because Jordan Matthews is usually lined up on the left side of the field, probably usually in the slot there, that's why Jordan Matthews is becoming a main target of Carson Wentz. So, it took all the power within me to hold that back, but it just did not work. So you know what? It makes sense. If someone can make sense of this, please just take that information.
The point is play Jordan Matthews because Carson Wentz is left eye dominant. Lock and load.
That was the long version of that factoid. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and that'll be our show.
Philly Talk Radio is I listened to it this week. It's fantastic. We got those stories, and then they talked about Nigel Bradham bringing a gun to the airport for like the entire day, and like it. Philly Sports Talk is delicious.
Yeah, we have the best radio hosts in the country. Just no question about it.
Anyway, on the Detroit side of the ball, not interested really in anybody. Theoretic potentially at 4,900 because there's going to be a lot of volume, and I imagine that they'll be trailing, but I am not targeting him.
One thing I do like to share here, it's not going to be as long. It's not going to be as long as a factoid. Jim Bob Cooter, great name, by the way, says that Golden Tate will have a, quote, huge week. That was all he said. I don't know. More targets?
So I
don't know.
The cynic in me is like, oh, he's going to have a big week. Is that like 4 catches for 50 yards? Because that's better than he's been doing.
Exactly. I mean, what's like big week is very subjective. We're not putting numbers there.
It is. It is kind of shocking that he's below $5,000.
Well, it's not shocking if you look at the game logs. He's failed to put up a 12-point fantasy performance this season. He started the season 11.3 against the Colts, 3.3 against the Titans, 7.2 against the Packers, and 3.1 against the Bears. I mean, it is odd to see him at 4,900.
Yeah.
Because even with Calvin Johnson last year, he was still able to put up very good games. But now that the lead guy is Marvin Jones, who, even if he is healthy, I don't think he'll have a good week this week. And it's just a great week to fade him. It's just not in a good spot.
Agreed.
So it's just not in the cards for him. Yeah, and I think it's just worth moving on to our next game because the Lions make me sad. I don't know. They probably make you very happy, Gary.
As a Vikings fan, I don't care about the Lions at all. So yeah, let's wallow in the
Yeah.
misery. But
Hashtag skull, right?
yes,
I
hashtag.
don't know what that actually means.
It's like some. I feel like it's a drinking salutation, kind of like a cheers.
I,
But I'd have to look that up.
yeah, yeah. When are do the Vikings? Yeah, Vikings play this week. I will get. I will get to their point later on when the Vikings do play. I will. I will tell you their narrative because
Okay,
I have a fantastic narrative streak for the Vikings this week, and just I'm excited. Just you wait.
let's get.
All right, so we back to things that matter. Yeah, back to things that people can comprehend. Bears are going up against the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are currently favored by 4.5 points in a game that features a 47.5 point total this week, and there are some injury notes to report here. Eddie Royal is questionable this week with a calf injury. He did not practice. He has not practiced at all this week with that calf. And Zach Miller returned to practice on Thursday with the rib injury, and he's expected to play. But just be wary that the ribs are an issue for him. And then for the Indianapolis Colts, Frank Gore is questionable this week with a chest injury. Damn, Mike. All right, I think we're good. Yeah, so he returned to practice on Thursday as well. So he should be fine for the upcoming week. Gary, I've talked enough for a short period of time. Give me your thoughts on this Bears team.
Well, I think it depends on injuries. So Eddie Royal is a great value at 4,200 if it turns out that that calf is not major, which I'm really hoping it's not because I'd like to play him for some value at wide receiver. You could go up to Alshon Jeffrey, who has kind of had some disappointing games so far this season, but we've seen in the past that he's a target monster. And Brian Hoyer shows a proclivity to target at least one receiver on any given weekend. I think the matchup this week against Vontae Davis, who hasn't been the Vontae Davis of old, is a pretty good one. So I'm hoping that all those rumors of Alshon Jeffrey being hurt and hurting his production, we get those cleared up over the weekend because I would like to play him. But Jordan Howard at 5,200 is the play for the Bears. Absolutely, he saw 91% of snaps last week. He's game flow independent. He's going to be running the ball, catching the ball. I feel like he's almost a must for the Bears.
Oh, absolutely. Jordan Howard's in a great spot this week against the Colts defense that has been very shaky all year. Another guy I kind of like this week. I don't know how I feel about him in tournaments, but cash, I do like him kind of. Brian Hoyer, who in his past 2 weeks is being the starter of the team, has had 22.9 and 22.8 fantasy points respectively in those 2 games. So yeah, I kind of like Brian Hoyer this week at 5,500. Strictly a cash game play. Tournaments. But he is a very solid cash game play for me at 5,500 on DraftKings. And even at 6K on FanDuel, very good salary relief play for a guy that's been getting the opportunities to succeed. And for the Colts here, I don't really like a whole lot. I know they're projected for 26 points per Vegas right now. But the only offense that I really like here is an Andrew Luck stack with T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton's been getting a massive amount of not massive, but he's been getting a very solid amount of targets, at least 10 in each of his first 4 games played this season. So I like that a lot. And then Andrew Luck, I know he's been shaky lately, but 7 passes against the Chargers and then 42 passes against the Jaguars. So at 47 against the Lions. So he's been throwing a good chunk of passes this year in that offense, especially with a terrible running back situation. So I really like that stack this week. Gary, what are you thinking here?
I love that stack as well. I know they came out and said that they're asking Andrew Luck to do too much, but I don't think they have a choice. They got an aging running back in Frank Gore who has chest injuries and a backup in Ferguson who's not really that impressive. So T.Y. Hilton is currently 6th in the league in targets this season, 10th in fantasy points. I think he's a great play, but I would also stack Dorsett in there. With Moncrief out, he stepped into that role. He showed himself as a deep threat last week in London. I think you could do a Luck, Dorsett, Hilton stack, and that would be pretty low owned considering the other plays on the slate.
Yeah, my only problem that I have with Philip Dorsett is that he's not. I mean, he might be getting the length, like the A dot might be high, but he's not getting the targets themselves. So when he does get targets, they are deep threat targets. But he just hasn't gotten a whole lot of targets, period, to begin with. Detroit Lions, he saw 6, which has been a season high so far. Only saw 5 against the Broncos, 4 against the Chargers, and then 3 against the Jaguars. So I don't know if I can trust Philip Dorsett. And at 4,800, I mean, it's kind of a low price on DraftKings. I would not even touch him on FanDuel. I don't know, just he's an extremely risky play, and I don't know. There's just not a whole lot of. It's not a whole lot of. I don't want to say safety in it, but like, it's a very dangerous stack. Using Philip Dorsett in there. So
I'm pitching it as a contrarian stack. I don't think you see anybody with Luck and Dorsett. He just has a good cornerback matchup. I admit, your point is well received. His targets aren't there, but they should be. I think that's my argument. They should be there, and I think we'll see it play out in the weeks to come.
Exactly. I agree with that point there. Looking at our next game here, we have the Tennessee Titans going up against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are currently favored by 3.5 points in a game that features a 43.5 point total right now. No injury news really to report on here, but I think the status of the game is more the question we have to ask. Hurricane Matthew currently just swarming through there. Very dangerous. I just saw something by Kevin Roth that hurricane has killed 264 Haitians so far. So yeah, very bad situation out there. Game being played is concerned. As far as DraftKings rules are concerned, as long as the game is played by Wednesday, the scoring should still count. So if it's moved any time past Wednesday for some reason, then this game will be off the slate. But really, if you look at it, is there a lot of interest here to begin with? Even if the weather conditions were perfect leading up to this game and no hurricane was of note or anything like that, is this game really playable just to begin with?
Well, it's certainly not my favorite game on the slate, but I mean, there's got to be points coming from somewhere. If the hurricane doesn't, give us huge 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, they kind of and rain that takes the passing game away. I don't mind Jarvis Landry and Ryan Tannehill. And even though, so this week, I feel like myself going very riskier than I've been the first 4 weeks of the season. Marcus Mariota has been the worst quarterback by any statistical measure so far this season. But we also know that he has a huge ceiling from last year, and he's at 5,400 against the Dolphins, who are 5th best versus the running back. They are the worst versus the wide receiver. It's a funnel defense, and no one will play him. So I could see him having a huge game, and I wouldn't hate a naked Mariota play this week, but it's not going to be my highest recommendation. And like you said, the weather is certainly to be taken into consideration. Tell me I'm crazy for the Marcus play.
Yes. I'm not even going to be sympathetic about it. I'm just going to say yes. It's crazy. I don't know. It's risky. It's like, weather aside.
Well, he's got Delaney back.
Yeah, he does have Delaney Walker back, but he's Marcus Mariota. He's gone up against his share of bad defenses this year to no success, really. he's played the Detroit Lions and the Oakland Raiders this season already, and he scored a combined what, like 25.4 DraftKings points in those two games. Throwing three interceptions on two touchdowns. Um, so he's played bad defenses already, and he hasn't been good in those games. So there's really nothing to prove to me that at any point for this season he's going to have a good game against a bad defense. You know what I'm saying?
True. I don't feel like this is a positive expected value play, but there is variance in football, and I think this is something you can capitalize on. He did put up 19 fantasy points against the Minnesota Vikings defense, which we all saw on Monday night is freaking fantastic. So with Kendall Wright back, Delanie Walker back, Tajae Sharpe back, you can play Delanie Walker 5,400, save yourself a bunch of money, and no one else will have him. It'll be under 1%.
Yeah, I mean, the upside is there. However, with the wide receiver stack, the upside isn't there with the receivers,
Oh, I don't want to stack
Oh yeah.
anybody.
No, it's that's where it gets risky, and that's oof.
Yep.
Oh man.
For sure.
Yeah, and then for the Dolphins here, other than Jarvis Landry, everyone else is off the board for me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, you can try to get cute with Devontae Parker, but I don't really have a lot of confidence in it. So I feel like we can just move on.
Exactly. So yeah, moving on to our next game, we have the Washington Redskins going up against the Baltimore Ravens. If I can pull it up here. Thank you, computer. Um, right now, the Ravens are favored by 4 points in a game that features a 45.5-point total. No injury news to report on here, so let's just jump into these Redskins offensive players here, where I do believe Deshaun Jackson has a lot of upside this week. I don't like what he's been doing with some of his antics, but all that aside,
What antics?
Yeah.
What antics?
What? He's wearing these shoes cleats that just, a bunch of.
Oh, the caution police tape.
Yeah, obviously another story for another day. But
Yeah.
as far as his on paper matchup is concerned, he does have one of the best matchups of any wide receiver on the slate. He's going up against Sharice Wright of the Baltimore Ravens, who out of 114 qualifying cornerbacks, he is 100th according to Pro Football Focus, with their rankings. So Deshaun Jackson at 5,900, going up against a poorly rated cornerback there. I think he makes for a very high upside play there. And I also like Jordan Reed, of course, as well. And then Matt Jones, who definitely saw great opportunities last week, albeit against the Cleveland Browns. He ran the ball 22 times for 117 yards and a touchdown, while also catching 2 passes for 21 yards. So I do like that spot there. Where are you going here with the Redskins?
Well, first off, Matt Jones is my boy. Called him out last week. I said they're going to have positive game script for the first time all season, and Matt Jones was a good play. Came through very nice for me. I am jumping off the Matt Jones train after just 1 week. I don't think that we can predict the Ravens to be trailing the Redskins in this game. They have too good of a defense, and they have a higher caliber quarterback in my eyes. So for me, it's Deshaun Jackson only on the Redskins. I love your point about the cornerback matchup. We just saw that guy get burned by Crabtree for 3 touchdowns last week. He is atrocious, and we should continue targeting him until they give him help. So Deshaun Jackson's in play for me. And on the reverse side of things, I am scared off by the timeshare for the Baltimore running backs. Kenneth Dixon's coming back, so I can't play Terrence West like I would like to. He looked pretty good last week. If I'm going to play anybody on this side, it would be Mike Wallace. And that is purely because I don't think Josh Norman would be matched up with him. I don't see Norman covering a speedster like Wallace. I could see him taking Steve Smith out of this game, which would pretty much funnel all the targets to Dennis Pitta and Mike Wallace.
Now, how do you feel about Terrence West? I mean, Terrence West with Justin Forsett now out of the equation. Last week against the Raiders, he had 21 attempts for 113 yards and a touchdown. So very strong game out of him. Yeah, I think game script might benefit him there, giving Terrence West a little bit more oomph. Like?
No, like I said, I can't trust him because we got Kenneth Dixon in the equation, and then you got who's the other guy? Buck Allen. Buck Allen's still involved, and John Harbaugh came out and said, "Is it John or is it Jim?" It's one of the Harbaughs. He came out and said that it's going to be a committee, essentially.
I like to say John.
He said that he's gonna get all 3 running backs involved, which to me says there's no upside. So I'm not gonna touch it.
That's fair. That's very fair to say. All right. You ready for something here?
Let's do it.
All right. Moving on to our next game, we have the Tennessee not what the hell did I just say?
We did that game.
Jeez. All right. The Houston Texans going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Wow. That just took skill for me to say that. Yeah, so we have the Houston Texans going up against the Minnesota Vikings. And are you ready for just the most hopeless form of narrative street you have ever heard in your life?
I am so excited.
All right. All right. So Sunday is Leif Erikson Day. According to the calendar of SpongeBob SquarePants, Sunday is Leif Erikson Day. October 9th of every year. Okay. Leif Erikson, for those of you who are not aware, was a Viking who had discovered the newfound world of the Americas, of North America, well before Christopher Columbus did. Right, so Leif Erikson was a lot more important in this whole discovery journey of finding in the Americas and whatnot. And obviously, there's a statue of Leif Erikson at the Minnesota State Capitol in St. Paul. Yes, I just read that off the Wikipedia page. Judge me, I want you to. But yes, Sunday is Leif Erikson Day. And I think the Vikings show up big for that reason. Is it the most hopeless form of narrative street you've ever sought in your life?
Not hopeless, but man,
it's kind of just one of those things where you're just digging for some narrative street somewhere, and you just find it in a made up SpongeBob holiday.
Well, SpongeBob shout out. Anytime we can get SpongeBob into the podcast, I'm all for it. Great show. Grew up on it. A lot of life lessons learned. I will throw some more, a little bit more conventional narrative behind this game. Xavier Rhodes is an elite cornerback who has a lot of a passer rating of 0 so far this season, which is mind-blowing, having considered that he just went up against Odell Beckham. Will Fuller, who has been an amazing value for the Texans, is going to be lining up on the right side. Xavier Rhodes is a starting left corner, meaning that they're going to be matched up a lot during this game. So that takes away him from consideration for me. Minnesota's defense is great against quarterbacks, wide receivers. They don't give up basically anything beyond 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. So there's dink and dunk passes to running backs, but I'm not going to target that for fantasy purposes. So the entire Houston Texans team is off limits for me. And on Minnesota side of things, Jerick McKinnon is a great value at $4,000. His price hasn't adjusted from his kind of breakout performance against the Giants, who have a really stout run defense, but he looked really good on Monday night. His jump cuts were incredible. So I will be targeting him in cash and GPP. And then Jonathan Joseph, who is a cornerback that most people fear in fantasy, has actually been giving out about 0.3 fantasy points per route, which is surprisingly high for him. So I think Stephon Diggs is in play this week at home on the fast turf against the Texans.
So first of all, let me crush your soul in 2 ways. That was an interesting way to phrase that, but it will crush your soul. I guarantee you, Gary. So first of all, before I get into anything else, I like the double dip kind of with Will Fuller and Texans defense. I kind of like the upside. I kind of like the upside you can get from that.
No. Don't agree.
Give me double dip on the punt. I don't know. I just have a good feeling about it in my gut. Uh, Over to the Vikings here. I forgot to share the injury news, so that would be important here, as well as the Vegas information. I was just so excited about the Leif Erikson point. Right now, the game only has a total of 41. The Vikings are favored by 6.5. Stefon Diggs hasn't practiced all week. He's been dealing with a groin injury, and with that groin injury, ever since week 2 of the season, his ADOT has decreased to 4.9 yards, which is some of the lowest in all of football. Since that week 2 performance against Green Bay. So I don't think I like Stefon Diggs this week at all. His groin is acting up, and I just don't like it at all. Kyle Rudolph has been dealing with a rib injury, and but he did return to practice on Thursday. I like him if Stefon Diggs is out, and of course I like Jerick McKinnon as well. So how does that feel for soul crushing?
Well, let me pick up the pieces of my life here. So Kyle Rudolph, he has the rib injury. I'll grant you that, but he does have baby swag this week. I believe his wife gave birth to twins, so congratulations to him. And I will not be playing him because Houston is the best versus the tight end so far this season for fantasy purposes. So he's off the table. I like your point about Diggs. I guess that makes sense that if his depth of target is going down, then we should probably be reading more into this injury concern than I was when I started this conversation. But I also, I remember the days of Percy Harvin and him basically missing Wednesday and Thursday practices when he was just a sophomore in the league because he had migraines and other issues, and basically just keeping him fresh for Sunday because he's an electric playmaker. But
here's the difference, though. I mean, it just seems like this groin injury has affected Stefon Diggs for multiple weeks, and he's been playing with it. With Percy Harvin, they would just keep him out when he was having the issues with the migraines. But with Stefon Diggs, they've been running him out with this bad groin, and they've just been aggravating this injury. And this is the first week he's been out of practice at all. Since everything, with his groin. So I don't know. I think they might either limit his usage or, just keep him out altogether because of the groin. Keep him fresh for later in the year.
They could do that. Something to monitor on the weekend, but I'm not scared of the. I mean, the matchup's pretty nice in my eyes, and last week he was covered by Jenkins for the Giants, who I think is a really good corner. So pretty much said all I can say. We should probably move on.
I guess. Moving on to our next game here, we have the New York Jets going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are currently favored by 7.5 points in a game that features a 48-point total. Just one little injury bug to report here. Actually, two. Eric Decker is out this week. He's been dealing with that shoulder. Doesn't seem to be getting better anytime soon. And Matt Forte has been dealing with knee and rib injuries, but he says he's been fine to practice today. Thursday, he was limited in practice on Wednesday, but did practice on Thursday in full, so I think he'll be a go. But just something, again, worth monitoring there. He's having 2 injuries. And if for whatever reason Matt Forte is out, just miraculously, Bilal Powell just becomes amazing. Last week against the Seahawks, he scored 14 fantasy points. He didn't really do much on the ground game, but he was targeted 9 times, catching 6 of them for 54 yards. So I kind of like Bilal Powell this week. Actually, I like Bilal Powell a lot this week. If Matt Forte's role is, none, or even if he's limited this week, just because of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Last week we saw Powell get 52% of the snaps to Forte's 48. So I think even if he plays, you're seeing the transition happening with Forte's injuries, and they can't make him the workhorse back that's going to get 80% of the snaps. For the rest of the offense, Brandon Marshall at 7,100 is really attractive this week. He's leading the league in targets 15 yards down the field, which is highly correlated with fantasy production. And he's also leading the league in red zone targets. and he's getting a juicy matchup against the Steelers secondary, which has not been good this season. And Quincy Enunwa, both those guys are going to see some increased production with Eric Decker out. So I like a Fitz Marshall, Fitz Enunwa, Powell on his own. There's a lot of people in play for me this week on the Jets. I think this is a high scoring affair.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the Steelers side, he'll get a lot more action, but I don't know. Maybe the Jets are kind of underrated, but Ryan Fitzpatrick just scares the hell out of me. So yeah. Well, but looking at this, what do you say?
He's 5,100. So I grant you that he might throw 2 to 3 interceptions, but I feel like this is a perfect week for him to also throw 2 to 3 touchdowns. And if he throws 3 touchdowns at 5,100, which is basically bare minimum, he's already net value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree there. Looking at the Steelers' offense here, Darrelle Revis is actually questionable for this week. So if he's out, my God, what's the ceiling for Antonio Brown at that point?
His ceiling is huge in my mind, regardless of whether Revis is out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Revis has been atrocious this year. He's allowing like 70 to 80% of the passes being thrown his way to be caught, which is not Revis Island that we come to know. And I think actually Revis would be lining more up with Sammy Coates in this game because he lines up on the left side, and Sammy Coates is the one who typically lines up on the right side of the Steelers. So I kind of view Coates as a high upside contrarian play, but I really love Antonio Brown this week. I think he's a must-have in cash. Le'Veon Bell, we saw him line up in the slot last Sunday night. I think he's a great play as well. Most people will be going to Antonio Brown. They'll kind of forget about Le'Veon. And Big Ben is perfect for cash and GPPs. We've seen the Jets be basically shredded by the quarterback and the number 1 wide receiver option for the entire season. So pick your Steeler. Who's your favorite this week?
If possible, I definitely want to see. I definitely want to have some Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell stacks. How is this going to happen? I don't know. Can it happen? Maybe.
Yeah, you got to find a lot of value elsewhere, but it's worthwhile.
There is. Yeah, I mean, there is value to be had, but I mean, at the very least, I definitely want to have Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown stacks. But Le'Veon Bell is such a force in the passing game as well. It's just hard not to have him in the stacks,
Yeah. We did see last year a millionaire maker win with, I believe it was Big Ben, D'Angelo, AB, and the Steelers defense. A complete game stack for the Steelers seems pretty appropriate for this week as well.
You could do it again. I don't see it not being a high upside stack, Yeah, it definitely has a lot of potential there. And I will certainly do my best to do that for this week. Yeah, so moving on to our next game here, we have the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are currently favored by 4.5 points in this game that features a 47-point total. So that's gone up since the last time I've checked. Looking at these, I look at the injury notes here. There's only two now to report on. Demaryius Thomas is dealing with a hip injury. He was limited in practice on Thursday, so look out for that. And then Trevor Siemian is dealing with that shoulder injury that he got last week against the Buccaneers. He threw during practice on Thursday, so it looks like he'll be a go. But look at this Falcons offense here first, Gary. I mean, with the stack that we mentioned, just before with Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown, I think that'll greatly diminish the ownership percentages for guys like Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, who went off last week against the Carolina Panthers. I know they're going up against a much better defense in the Broncos, and they're in Denver this time as opposed to being home in Atlanta. But do you see a possibility of a stack here with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones?
I don't. I have a lot of respect for the Broncos defense. I think Aqib Talib matches up physically with Julio Jones. And schematically, I think they can neutralize this offense that has been completely explosive for the first 4 weeks of the season. I will say that it's kind of a fast game. I believe Atlanta plays 11th fastest in situation neutral pace, and Denver plays 8th fastest. So there could be some potential for an offensive show here, but I'm not playing it. I also don't like buying stocks when they're high. I mean, we just saw Julio Jones, his value skyrocket last week. That doesn't scream for me to get back on, especially in an atrocious matchup. So I will be staying away from the Falcons. Are you going to take another flyer on Julio this week?
The contrarian in me says yes. The way that I've rewired my mind says I have to. Like, just to say I did, you know? I have to. Like for a lot of people, like how the psychology works about being contrarian, like using Julio Jones this week would be the thing that hurts your mind, like physically hurts your brain, if you know what if you understand what I'm talking about psychologically. But I think what would actually bother me this week is and I felt the same way last week with Julio, just not having him in my lineups would hurt my brain. It physically would pain me. So I had the great feeling last week, and obviously, if you've looked at my Twitter feed, I succeeded to some degree. So I'm going back to the well.
Okay.
If he's going to be low owned, I'm going back to the well.
Yeah, I mean, I could see the play last week. I'm not buying in this week, and I'm not really encouraging pain here. I'm really encouraging smarter contrarian options. I think Julio Jones will be higher owned than AJ Green against the Cowboys, which we're about to talk about, because everyone's looking at Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown, and then we just saw Julio Jones put up 51 points, which is ridiculous in fantasy. So I don't see him being low owned even with the matchup. So the upside's not there for me.
Yeah, and then one more thing to talk about here. Tevin Coleman has a sickle cell issue, apparently, where, I mean, we've seen guys in the past have sickle cell issues, not play when their team goes to Denver because the high altitude affects their disease or whatever. So, I mean, right now, the Falcons are still saying, we're going by the running back by committee that we normally do. But I don't know. Devontae Freeman seems like a better option now just because Tevin Coleman has a sickle cell issue, right? I don't know. But
yeah.
But going up against the Broncos, I still don't like it.
Yeah, it's tough to like, but I mean, the Broncos have to give up yards somewhere, and they're second best versus the quarterback. They're the best versus the wide receiver, and they're the fourth best versus the tight end. They're not top 5 versus the running back, so they're giving up some yards on the ground, which is a somewhat comforting fact if you're convincing yourself to play Freeman because Tevin Coleman might be out, but it's certainly not the best reason to spend $5K on somebody. I could see you justifying it, though.
Yeah. And then look at the Broncos offense here. Like I said before, Demaryius Thomas is questionable with the hip. But really, the one play I really like here for the Broncos offense is Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, his last 2 games, he has seen 13 targets in each of those last 2 games, scoring 35.7 and 22.8 fantasy point or DraftKings points respectively. I just really like Emmanuel Sanders this week. He'll probably be higher owned because he's been on fire lately. And if Demaryius Thomas is out, then Desmond Trufant will definitely be on Emmanuel Sanders, which at that point, then he's not great, but I still like the potential upside that he has.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's leading the NFL, or he's tied for the lead in NFL in red zone targets with 8 and targets inside the 10 with 7. Like you said, he's seeing a lot more targets than DT, and the Falcons defense for as impressive as the offenses look, their defense isn't that great. They're just outscoring people. So there's points to be had. My favorite play for the Broncos is the running back and tight end because the Falcons have 4 linebackers out, which is an astoundingly high number for me. And that leads to production at both the running back and tight end position. So Virgil Green at 2,800 is in play for me, and C.J. Anderson at home in a pretty good game script is in play as well.
I love it. Love it. Yeah. If my computer wants to cooperate here, there we go. Yeah. So good stuff there. Moving on to our next game, we have the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. Right now, the Bengals are currently favored by 1 point in a game that features a 45.5 point total. 2 injury notes to report here. Jeremy Hill is questionable this week with a chest injury, was limited in practice on Thursday. And Des Bryant is questionable with a knee injury, although it seems like he's unlikely to play this week because of that knee. So Bryce Butler will get his spot there. We'll talk about that in a second, but Gary, just share what you like here about the Bengals and say one of these names that I really love here.
Okay, I think I'm gonna touch on it, but we'll see. So the Gio news is, or the Hill news is interesting because Gio would be in play at 4,400 if Hill was for some reason be out. Dallas is shockingly third worst in the league versus the tight end this season, which isn't something I would expect with Sean Lee at linebacker, but it's playing out that way. So Uzomah, I think, is back at 2,500 with Tyler Eifert not coming back. But my favorite play is going to be AJ Green at 8,900. I kind of touched on this before. I don't think people will play him, and he's better on the road than he is at home. That's borne out over time. We saw him explode against the Dolphins. He's not going to be covered by Claiborne, which would scare me a lot more. And if Tom were here on this podcast, he would kind of back that up, that that's their best corner. So I think he's a pretty high upside play.
If Tom were here, he would tell us the entire history of the Dallas Cowboys against the Cincinnati Bengals and what, he would tell us what like Roger Staubach was doing back in the day. And, he'd say, oh, well, Roger Staubach had a great influence on. He would just tell us the entire Dallas Cowboys history.
Yeah, but he's not here, so we get to call them the Cowgirls and say whatever.
Oh yeah, I'll call him the Cowgirls all day, whether he's here or not. It's that's irrelevant. Yeah. So that's the Bengals there. I mean, AJ Green is in a solid matchup here. Had a very strong game last week. 12 targets, 10 catches, 173 yards, and a touchdown. Yeah, so just great stuff going on there. And then looking at the Cowboys, I don't see the upside here in a lot, except for maybe Bryce Butler, who showed some promise last week against San Francisco. So other than Bryce Butler, I don't really like a whole lot here. What about you?
Yeah, if I wanted Bryce Butler to have a better matchup, but it seems like Cole Beasley has the best cornerback matchup, and I don't really trust his upside. So I'm probably just going to stay away from everybody.
Good stuff. Short, sweet, and to the point, right?
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to another game that I think will be even shorter, sweeter, and more to the point. We have the Buffalo Bills going up against the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are currently favored by 2 in a game that features only a 39.5 point total. No injury news here. I will share but 3 factoids. I like both defenses in this game a whole lot. The only offensive player I like from either side of this game is Tavon Austin. And third, my only reason for saying that is the double dip. I have no other reason other than that to like anything from this game offensively.
Yeah, you're loving the double dip this week. Tavon and Will Fuller. Yeah. Will Fuller. I mean, I guess I could get behind that. There's not a lot for me to add, honestly. I like LaShawn McCoy's volume, and the Rams haven't been that great defensively against the run. So if the Bills are going to win the game, I think he'll be heavily involved, but not my favorite running back play by any means.
No, this game's going to be a crap fest, and I'll probably end up watching it because NFL Sunday Ticket is what it is. But it's just going to suck. It's hate watching. That's what it is. Yeah, so moving on to our next game here, we have the San Diego Chargers going up against the Oakland Raiders. Right now, the Raiders are favored by 3.5 in a game that features a 50.5 point total. I don't think, actually, yeah, there is one injury note to report here. Actually, two. Latavius Murray looks to be unlikely to play with that toe injury. So that means DeAndre Washington will step up as the top running back for Oakland this week at 3,400 on DraftKings. We'll get back to that when we get to the Raiders. And then Clive Walford, he did practice today on Thursday. There was a very legitimate concern that Clive Walford was going to be out this week, but with that knee injury. But he does seem to be in play for this week over there, which is quite a damn shame because, I mean, I love Clive Walford, but at the same time, I would have loved the value that Mykel Rivera would have provided to us, but obviously that's not going to happen this week. So let's look at this San Diego Chargers offense, Gary, and just share with me who you like for the Chargers this week.
Well, I think this game has a lot of upside. Melvin Gordon's currently leading the league in carries inside the 20-yard line, inside the 10-yard line, and inside the 5-yard line. And those are the highest chances for fantasy production for a running back, obviously. So at 7K, he's probably getting a little bit too high for me. I feel like we've gotten a little fortunate with how many touchdowns he's converted so far this season. So I will not be playing him this week. I will be focusing more on the passing attack with Phillip Rivers. And then I'm still hunting for the best passing option. Last week it was Inman, and I kind of like his matchup the most against the Raiders secondary this week. Hunter Henry at 3,300, I think, is a great play in cash and GPP. He's stepped into that Antonio Gates role, and we know how much Phillip Rivers has loved targeting the tight end so far. Oakland's been giving up a lot of efficiency to quarterbacks. They're 8th worst versus the quarterback, 3rd worst versus the wide receiver. I think it's more about what your gut tells you, whether Travis Benjamin or Tyrell Williams or Inman or Hunter Henry is a good play. I think they're all fine. You just kind of have to do your own research and pick which one you like best.
Exactly. I mean, with Melvin Gordon, here's the thing with Melvin Gordon. Like, his performance last week was the flukiest thing you could have possibly seen. Here's why. You know, he ran the ball 19 yards last week, and he only ran for 36 yards. I mean, he did catch 6 balls on 7 targets for 43 yards. But as far as the rushing's concerned, I mean, he only ran for 36 yards against a rushing defense that is rated the 4th worst in all of football, according to Football Outsiders stats. So really, he is very touchdown dependent, especially with knowing that up to 3 offensive linemen for the San Diego Chargers could be out this week. So you really need to look at that with Melvin Gordon and really think to see if 7,000 on DraftKings is worth paying up for. I mean, on FanDuel, 7,700, I'm okay with that, but 7K on DraftKings, I think there are many better options to go with.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would think that the pendulum swings back to the passing game.
Yeah, especially with Oakland projected to be leading this game towards the end. And then look at this Oakland Raiders offense here. I mean, I mentioned DeAndre Washington before. He's probably going to be very chalky this week if Latavius Murray is out. But I don't know if I'm really in love with his skills, but he also hasn't had the opportunity to present them. So, at 3,400, I like the play. The opportunities will certainly be there. And then I love it a lot more on FanDuel as well at 4,700. So like the play there for DeAndre Washington. Michael Crabtree, Amari Cooper, who you got there?
I'm going to keep riding the hot hand. I'll go Crabtree again. So the big news this week is that Jason Barrett is out with a partially torn ACL. He's going to have surgery. He's done for the year. We all know how great of a corner he is, and it explains why T.Y. Hilton lit him up, I think a couple weeks ago. But they also have a really good cornerback named Hayward on the other side, who's probably just going to slot into that first cornerback position and match up against Cooper, leaving Crabtree with the backup. And we saw how productive Crabtree was last week against the Ravens, and I'm probably going to buy in on him again. And the thing with DeAndre Washington is I need to research more on the weekend to know what his workload's going to be. Like Jalen Richard is probably going to be in the equation as well. I need to make a decision based upon reports whether or not he's going to have enough workload to merit the upside that I think he can have, because he is an elite talent. But if they committee him, then I probably won't go there.
Exactly, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the DFS industry feels the same way there as well. Also, one more thing to note is that Brandon Flowers is questionable for this game as well. So if he's out, I mean, you got one solid cornerback for the Chargers, but that's it. That's all they got, and it'll get ugly for the Chargers quickly if Brandon Flowers is out this week over there. Moving on to our last game of the slate here, we have the New York Giants going up against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are currently favored by 7 points in a game that features a 48-point total. Rashard Jennings is questionable this week with a thumb injury. He was limited in practice on Thursday. And Larry Donnell is dealing with a concussion issue. He did not practice on Thursday. Does not seem to be in for this week. I don't think there's anything for the Packers here. No. All right, so let's just look at this New York Giants offense first. Gary, you were mentioning Odell Beckham Jr. earlier in the show as someone who might be on the public's radar. Kind of talk more about him for a second there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things pointing to Odell Beckham this week. You got the squeaky wheel narrative. We've heard him come out and say he's not having fun playing football anymore. His production's been down. He's the key to the offense. He's their one playmaker, their one elite playmaker. So he has narrative working for him. Also, the Packers are going to be without Sam Shields again this week, still coming back from that concussion. With him out, the Packers are giving up the second most passing yards per game without him. And we've seen Stephon Diggs basically light up this defense. We've seen other players have huge monster games. There's no reason to think that Odell Beckham wouldn't have a nice bounce back here unless his mental issues get completely in the way. So I love the Giants passing attack this week. Odell Beckham, Eli Manning, and Victor Cruz at 4,500 I think is in play as well. He lines up on the right side most of the time, and Green Bay has given up 60% of the production I just talked about from wide receivers lining up on the right side. So he's going to have a really nice matchup over there. Their one good cornerback is going to be in the slot covering Sterling Shepard, so I will be avoiding him, but everything else is kind of in play for me. Are you going to join me on Odell Beckham this week?
See, here's how I feel about Odell Beckham Jr. I think everything he's doing right now just makes for the biggest troll job in football history. Personally, I just feel something within me that I don't feel like he actually thinks these things are true. I just think he's saying them to like mess with the defenses that he's going up against, because he has to do something. Obviously people have realized that Odell Beckham Jr. is one of the great receiving talents in football, and they figured out how to stop him, by getting in his head. So if he gets in their heads first, by thinking that they got in his head, they might back off a little bit. So I do like the Odell Beckham Jr. narrative there, just because I think he's just trolling with the opposing defenses here.
I'm not sure I follow that mental logic there. He's getting in their heads by pretending that they're getting into his head.
It works out in my head.
Oh man, I have a headache. I think you're giving Odell Beckham too much credit. I don't view him as.
I think he's a lot smarter than he makes the public think he is. Like that's really all it comes down to. His public perception is that he seems to sound really stupid, but I think he's trying to mess with us. I don't know. It's all one big conspiracy at the end of the day. Uh,
All right.
what?
Well, we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
give them some type of test and we'll find out.
Yeah. One quick thing I need to note here. I mean, it's going to be 46 degrees at game time for this game. So it's going to be cold. I don't know how that really affects.
All right, are you from Florida? From Philly or Florida?
I would say Philadelphia, but I mean, I'm 125 pounds. I think everything's really cold.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the Packers are going to be complaining about 46 degrees at Lambeau.
Yeah, I know. It just looks like a very low number to see, but it is October, so yeah.
It's perfect football weather. You're wearing pads. 46 feels pretty good.
I'm not judging these guys, but but look at these Packers offensive players here. The two guys that I really want to gravitate toward the most are Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson. Obviously they fed positively to one another ever since Jordy Nelson has come back from that ACL injury from last year. They feed off of each other positively, but from that, they negatively affect the rest of the options in this lineup. So Devontae Adams, Eddie Lacy, James Starks, Richard Rodgers, Randall Cobb. I don't think they have good games this week, just because no one else is getting the volume like Jordy Nelson is in that Packers offense.
Yeah. So historically, you're absolutely right. I'm going out on a limb this week and saying that changes. We've seen the Giants get attacked over the middle. So that makes me like Randall Cobb in the slot this week. We know that Jenkins is going to be on Jordy Nelson, and I view them as they're really their only corner because Cromartie is going to be out. Eli Apple is probably going to be out. So Randall Cobb's going to be going against a backup in the middle of the field, which they've been getting torched by like Jay Crowder and other subpar talents. So I think Aaron Rodgers is smart enough to know that he can't rely on Jordy Nelson the entire year and is going to try to get some people involved this week at home in prime time. So Randall Cobb is kind of my pivot play this week off of Jordy Nelson, who I agree on paper looks fantastic, but I'm going to go with Randall Cobb this week.
I think the word there is ballsy. That's really all I can say. It's ballsy.
Yeah.
Bold move, Cotton.
Let's see if it works out.
I hope for you it does. I really do. All right. That'll do it for the slate here. Let's build us a tournament lineup. Gary, I will give you first pick because why the hell not?
Well, that's nice of you. I thought since you picked Julio Jones last week that you would go, but
I'm feeling kind.
You're a very benevolent king. I will go with Jordan Howard first at 5,200 in the running back spot.
All right, so he's locked and loaded and ready to go. I don't know. This is a tough one. I will go out on a limb.
Whew.
Let's use the Leif Erikson Day narrative and go Jerick McKinnon.
I like it.
So we have two value running backs to start off here, and Gary, you're up next.
Okay. Well, we found some pretty good value. Let's go with the guy who got game scripted after 4 drives last week and put Antonio Brown in.
Oh man, that was painful.
It's unbelievable. Like if that game was close, the yardage and production he would have put up would have been ridiculous.
I will fully agree. At quarterback, let's just go with Ben Roethlisberger. Stack the guys up. It's just bound to happen. We have 2 value running backs to start, and then we just pay up for quarterback, wide receiver. I think it works out well there to start. So your pick up next.
Okay. Well, I think we both like that game. Let's stack it. We got an average of 4,800 left. I'm going to go right around there with Enunwa, with Eric Decker out at 4,600, correlating with the Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown stack.
Sounds good there. All right, so we got 2 receivers. Let's pick a tight end. I'll pick a tight end for our next pick here. And I want to go back to the Hunter Henry well. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. All right, we're back. So yeah, I'm going to go to the Hunter Henry well here. He's 3,300 this week, and I think the upside with the targets is going to be there again. I think Phillip Rivers always needs a tight end to check down to. And right now, Hunter Henry's the guy, so I'm going with him at 3,300 this week.
I like the call there. Let's go. Well, so first off, we have an average of 5,300 remaining. Let's put T.Y. Hilton in as our third wide receiver versus the Bears.
Solid pick. I like it. Yeah. And I'll pick our defense here. And I'll go with the stack. I'll go with the defensive stack. So I'll go with Minnesota Vikings defense for us there. So we have one more spot left, $5,100 for the flex.
Whew. All right. Wow. So let's go with the high upside pick. $0 remaining. Put Mike Wallace in there.
Solid option. All right. So that makes our lineup Ben Roethlisberger, Jordan Howard, Jerick McKinnon, Antonio Brown, Quincy Enunwa, T.Y. Hilton, Hunter Henry, Mike Wallace, and Vikings defense. That'll do it for us, guys. Gary, that was a fantastic show. Our two-man squad here hopefully doesn't get chopped down to one next week. Yeah, that has been us for the RotoQL Trips Wide podcast for week 5 of the NFL season. I am your host, Evan Cheney, joined today by Gary Huber. And if we are not winning all of the money, guys, we hope you do. So good luck in your contest this week.
Peace.